When you hear the word Vikings, what images come to mind? Maybe it's warriors charging into battle, axes raised, feasting on roasted meat in great halls, drinking horns of mead, and sailing across the seas in dragon-headed ships. The image is powerful, adventurous, fearless, free. But the truth? Daily Viking life was far less glorious. Living in a Viking village meant hardship, struggle, and discomfort that most of us today would find unbearable. Forget glamorous feasts and legendary raids. The reality was smoky houses, harsh winters, hunger, disease, violence, and fear. So tonight, let's step into a Viking village. Let's see what life was really like, and why you would probably hate it. The first thing you'd notice is the weather. Viking lands stretched across modern-day Norway, Denmark, and Sweden, some of the coldest and most unforgiving parts of Europe. Winters were long, icy, and dark, with only a few hours of daylight. Summers were short, just enough to grow crops if the weather allowed. You'd live in a longhouse, a large wooden hall shared with your family, animals, and sometimes neighbors. Sounds cozy? Think again. The roof was thatched, the floor dirt. A single fire pit burned in the center, sending smoke upward. But there was no chimney, so the smoke filled the air, stinging your eyes and lungs. Imagine trying to sleep while your chest tightens with every breath of smoke. Your daily life? Farming, chopping wood, carrying water, feeding animals, men, women, children, everyone worked. Hunger was a constant fear. If crops failed or winter dragged on, you'd survive on dried fish, salty meat, or rock-hard bread. Food was fuel, not pleasure. The lesson here: Viking life wasn't a saga of adventure. It was survival. To be fair, Vikings cared about grooming more than many ancient societies. Archaeologists have found combs, tweezers, razors, signs that they valued cleanliness. But don't be fooled. Hygiene by modern standards was poor. Toilets? None. You'd use waste pits or rivers. Water sources often doubled as dumping grounds, leading to contamination. Drinking water could make you sick, so people often drank weak ale, safer, but hardly refreshing. Baths were rare luxuries. Most villages managed a weekly wash at best. Soap was made from animal fat and ash. Parasites like lice, fleas, and worms were constant companions. Illness was everywhere. Dysentery, fevers, infections, and epidemics could sweep through entire communities. With no antibiotics, even a cut could kill. The average life expectancy hovered around 40 years. Imagine being considered old at an age many of us now call middle-aged. Viking society prized honor. Your reputation was everything. An insult wasn't just words. It could spark a feud lasting generations. Disputes were settled at the Thing, a local assembly. Here, free men debated and voted on punishments. If you were found guilty of theft, adultery, or betrayal, punishments could be brutal: exile, slavery, or death. And exile in Viking lands was often a death sentence. Without the protection of a community, surviving the cold and the wilderness was nearly impossible. Think about the pressure this created. One wrong word, one lost argument, one insult taken too far, and your entire life could collapse. You couldn't afford to be timid, but you also couldn't afford to be reckless. Living in a Viking village meant living under constant social tension. Women in Viking society had more rights than in many ancient cultures. They could own property, inherit wealth, and even divorce. But their daily reality was still exhausting. Women were the backbone of family life. They cooked, wove clothes, managed the household, preserved food for winter, cared for children, and often tended fields while men were away. Imagine doing all this without modern tools, electricity, or medicine. Childbirth was dangerous. Many women didn't survive it. Those who did often lost children to illness before they reached adulthood. Childhood was short. By the age of 10, most children were already working, herding animals, hauling water, or helping in the fields. Life was not equal opportunity adventure. It was relentless labor. Hollywood shows us endless Viking feasts, roasting boars, rivers of mead, overflowing tables. But reality was less glamorous. The Viking diet was heavy on grains, barley, rye, oats. You'd eat thick bread, porridge, and stews of cabbage or root vegetables. Fish was common, especially in coastal villages. Meat? Rare, unless you were wealthy or it was a festival. Yes, there were feasts, after raids or harvests, but daily meals were plain and repetitive. Imagine eating the same porridge every morning, every winter, for months. The feasts you imagine were exceptions, not the rule. Medical knowledge was limited. People relied on herbs, charms, and prayers. Broken bones often healed badly, if at all. Infected wounds meant fever and death. Toothaches were constant, with no dentists to help. Epidemics were deadly. When the plague or smallpox swept through, entire families perished. And in cramped, smoky longhouses, disease spread like wildfire. The average Viking body carried the marks of a hard life: arthritis from endless labor, scars from accidents or fights, teeth worn down by gritty bread. Life was short and rarely painless. Yes, Vikings raided, but raiding was no glorious adventure. It was brutal and dangerous. Picture rowing for days in freezing seas, waves crashing over the ship, clothes soaked, fingers numb, then landing in hostile territory, fighting trained soldiers or desperate villagers. Wounds, death, capture, all were likely. And remember, not everyone raided. Most Vikings were farmers. Only a few young men went on raids, and many never returned. The warrior image was thrilling in sagas, but for most it was terrifying reality. The gods of the Norse pantheon were powerful, but not comforting. Odin demanded sacrifice. Thor brought storms. Loki sowed chaos. Life was guided by omens, superstitions, and rituals. Farmers prayed for good harvests, sailors for safe seas, warriors for victory. But the gods gave no guarantees, and always in the background was fear of Ragnarok, the end of the world, when gods and men alike would perish in fire and chaos. Imagine living with constant fear of divine wrath and cosmic doom. Faith brought meaning, but also fear. Viking villages were not safe havens. Violence lurked everywhere. Slavery was common. Thralls, enslaved people captured in raids, worked the hardest jobs with no rights. They could be bought, sold, or killed at a master's whim. Blood feuds were frequent. A single insult could spiral into generations of revenge. There was no police force, no central authority. Justice was personal, often violent. In a Viking village, you were never far from danger, whether from enemies outside or disputes within. So let's step back. Why would you hate living in a Viking village? You'd live in a smoky, cramped longhouse with little comfort. Winters would be freezing, food scarce, and survival never guaranteed. Hygiene was poor, disease constant, medicine almost non-existent. Social pressure forced you to fight, defend honor, or risk exile. Violence and slavery were part of daily life. And through it all, You'd face the fear of gods, death, and chaos. The Viking world was not glamorous. It was unforgiving, relentless, and often cruel. And yet, the Vikings endured. They braved seas, built ships, carved out farms in harsh lands, and left behind sagas that still inspire us. But make no mistake, you would not enjoy living in their world. The next time you step into a warm house, pour a clean glass of water, or take medicine for a simple illness, remember, these small comforts are luxuries the Vikings could only dream of. Their strength lay in surviving what we today would struggle to bear. And that's why, if you found yourself in a Viking village, you would probably hate it.